Okay, let's be real. Are you currently staring at a blinking cursor on a blank screen, feeling completely stuck on your translation thesis proposal? Look, don't panic. You are in exactly the right place. Consider this explainer your ultimate survival guide. Today, we're going to walk step by step through the process of unsticking your research by defining something called a translatable unit. We're going to take your messy, overwhelming ideas and transform them into a sharp, undeniable research object. All right, let's get to work.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our 6-part roadmap to get you completely unstuck. We're covering avoiding the broad research trap, understanding the translatable unit, the 5 steps of object determination, inclusion and exclusion criteria, the secrets of valid metadata, and finally, a research object checklist.
So, starting off with Section 1, avoiding the broad research trap.
I've got to ask you a direct question. Is choosing a movie, a novel, or a pop album enough to count as your research object? A lot of students feel incredibly confident just because they've picked a really cool text. They think, awesome, I'm going to analyze the latest Marvel movie, I'm totally good to go. But the definitive academic answer to that? It's a resounding no. Choosing a text is literally just the beginning. It is absolutely not your actual object of research. To avoid falling into that trap, we've really got to clarify a crucial methodological difference. First, we have the research object, and this is the specific phenomenon you want to analyze. Second, we have your data, which is the empirical proof you collect, like pairs of source text and target text. If you confuse these two, you're going to ruin your operational focus. Think of it this way. Your data is what you look at, but your research object is what you are actually looking for. Moving right along to Section 2. Understanding the translatable unit. Okay, so what exactly is a translatable unit? Well, it's the specific linguistic unit treated as the object of translation analysis. But notice the key phrase here. It is always smaller and more operational than the whole text. This definition absolutely forces you to answer exactly what part of the source and target text you're truly putting under the microscope. It's not the whole book, right? It's a very specific, manageable slice of it. What's really fascinating is that this unit can exist at totally different levels, entirely depending on what you're studying. At the micro level, you might be looking at individual words or specific medical terms. Then we have the meso level, which scales things up to phrases, sentences, or even metaphors. And finally, there's the macro level, where you're capturing whole paragraphs, full subtitle segments with exact time codes, or overarching concepts like humor. Your chosen phenomenon dictates exactly which of these levels you need to be zeroing in on. All right, Section 3, the 5 steps of object determination. Consider this your absolute blueprint. Step 1 is defining your container. Step 2 is identifying your phenomenon. Step 3 is writing out your technical definition. Step 4 is determining your scope through inclusion and exclusion criteria. And Step 5 is logging your metadata. Listen, I cannot stress this enough. Skipping even one of these 5 essential steps can lead straight to a rejected proposal. So let's break them down. Steps 1 through 3 require you to lock down a solid foundation. First up, you need a verifiable container, so not just a movie, but a specific edition or director's cut on a specific streaming platform. Second, you select your phenomenon within that container, something like wordplay and multimedia translation. And third, you have to define your terms using actual academic theory, not just a general dictionary. Basically, you need to explain what wordplay is according to translation scholars, not according to Wikipedia. That brings us to Section 4, inclusion and exclusion criteria. This is where a lot of students get tangled up, so let's look at a practical example of terminology research. For our inclusion criteria, we're only including medical terms with specific target matches. For our exclusion criteria, we are tossing out general vocabulary words like doctor or patient. And this brilliantly illustrates how excluding general words isn't just some arbitrary choice, it's a vital strategy. It stops you from drowning in useless data and ensures your terminology analysis stays deep and academically rigorous. Let's try another one. Imagine you're doing subtitling research on humor. Your inclusion criteria would be humor based specifically on wordplay or puns in the dialogue. Your exclusion criteria? Visual, slapstick humor, or physical gags. Why? Well, because even if a visual, physical gag is absolutely hilarious, if it doesn't actually rely on language translation, it does not belong in your dataset. You've got to exclude it to keep your linguistic research completely valid. Next up, Section 5, Secrets of Valid Metadata. So metadata is essentially data about your data, and it works on 2 distinct levels. First is your container level metadata. This includes the title, edition, author or director, release year, source and target languages, the genre, and the target audience profile. Logging all this establishes the broader context and the exact conditions of the text production. Basically, it tells your examiner, hey, I know exactly where my data lives. Then, you need unit-level metadata. For every single translatable unit you pull out, you have to log its exact location, like the specific page number or the exact video timecode. You also need minimal context, maybe one or two surrounding sentences, plus an initial classification category. Why is this such a big deal? Because this is exactly what allows future researchers to replicate your study. It traces every single translation decision you analyze right back to its undeniable context.
Let's move to and see how this builds together by comparing two different methodologies. Take a classic text analysis thesis. Your object might be 25 metaphors. The metadata is the exact page context, and the container is a specific literary theme. Now, compare that with a multimedia translation thesis. The object is 40 wordplay segments. The metadata uses specific timecodes, and the constraints involve on-screen character limits. In both cases, the container, the object, and the metadata lock together perfectly to create a totally feasible operational study.
Finally, Section 6, the Research Object Checklist. Before you submit anything, I want you to mentally check off these 7 boxes. Do you have a consistent area and object? A verifiable container? A clearly stated phenomenon? A technical definition backed by theory? Clear inclusion and exclusion criteria? Complete 2-level metadata? And finally, a realistic data size. If you can confidently check all 7 of these off, your research object is rock solid, incredibly feasible, and you are 100% ready to start analyzing. If you remember only one thing from this explainer, make it this. The translatable unit is not just whatever can be translated, but the most precise unit to produce valid and focused analysis. Seriously, precision and strict boundaries are the only differences between a frustrating, never-ending thesis and a highly successful, fast-moving one. So, I'll leave you with this final, somewhat provocative question. Is your research object truly sharp enough right now, or is it secretly still just a container? I challenge you. The very moment this explainer ends, open up your thesis proposal document. Apply these 5 steps. Force yourself to narrow down your focus, exclude all the noise, and define your translatable unit. You've got this. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and good luck with your research.